welcome to my channel. Today we are starting a reading vlog. I just finally felt the plunge to go ahead and just dive into some backlist fantasy romance. I watched Chandler Ainsley's video. I'll link it in the cards above, but it's something along the lines of read these books instead of Crescent City. If you know me, you know how I feel about Crescent City. I was gonna say that I love it, but there's a complex list of emotions that come up with Crescent City now. Anyways, I love urban fantasy, especially whenever you mix it in with a combination of romance. Sign me up. So today we are in fact signing myself up for a week of reading some backlist fantasy romance. So I have officially, as you can tell, I'm sitting in front of Barnes & Noble. I have acquired some books for this week. If you haven't already seen my most recent book shopping vlog, I'll again put it in the cards above. I looked high and low for used copies of both Angel's Blood and Dark Fever, and I could not find them anywhere. I also checked my library, and for some reason none of the ebooks are available. I went ahead and just got the mass market. I fortunately enough hit $8 in Barnes & Noble rewards, so this book was free. This isn't even girl math free, it's just straight up free. So I walked out from Barnes with this lovely book. However, they did also have two other books, one of which being a book that I happened to literally just get from my friend Allie. So Allie and Abe, my two book club friends, they own Blair Bookshops, which is a used pop-up bookstore, and it's the freaking coolest. But I popped over to Allie's house for a review, and she happened to have Dark Fever. Thanks, Allie, you're helping the sourcing here today. I feel like the fact that she just casually had this was completely meant to be. It makes me feel even better about the fact that we are doing this vlog. Third book that I am planning to read this week is Burn For Me by Alana Andrews. If you watch my Nashville reading blog, I was talking to Maddie in one of the used bookstores about how I want to read more urban fantasy, and I feel like more people would want to read urban fantasy if the older books had new covers. Well, come to find out, here we go. I did see one copy of this book in Barnes, but it was kind of not the best. I did just check Pango while I was sitting in there, and I did find a copy on Pango. We have a very solid TBR for the week. As far as what I'm going to read first, it obviously has to be one of these two. Maybe Tori and somebody read this actually. I will check in with you when I have a reading update for you. I'm so excited! Hello friends, I have a literal 0 reading updates for you. However, I I got 2 Pango orders technically, but I figured we could do a quick little unbagging. It's not really a box. I'm gonna call it an unbagging, if you will. I feel a little bit like a silly goose because I did in fact order Burn For Me by Alana Andrews. However, I did find out 2 seconds after I placed my order, this is available on KU. I happen to have a physical copy now. I also did happen to find a copy of Binding 13, which I am very, very excited to read. However, the first print run of all of the new traditionally published copies all have the ombre edges. You can hardly ever find Binding 13 anymore, and if you're looking at Pango specifically, I checked a couple other sites, but Pango is usually the cheapest. A lot of times Binding 13 was going for like $40+. I happened to find a seller that had a picture of it like this, but I could see like the tiniest little bit of a color, and I was like, I wonder. And it was $7.50. So I immediately snagged that. Anyways, I am very excited about both of these. I think this is going to be the last book that I read this week. I did get the yes from Tori. We are going to be buddy reading Angel's Blood, so that will be the first book that I read in this vlog. So I will check back in with you when I have actually started it. I'm thinking I'm going to start it tonight, and what a time to be live. So one of my goals for this summer, I should say, also, I don't know why I'm just like so itchy right now. It's just a thing. One of my goals for this summer is to actually, you know, go outside more. And part of that is I'm attempting to read and eat dinner. I can actually use my back patio. It's kind of a vibe. I've also gotten a literal 0 sun this summer so far, and I'm kind of feeling it. Like self-tanning needs to happen immediately. Regardless, I have officially started Angel's Blood, and I'm the best time. With it being published in 2009, I was prepared for it to be a little, maybe not cringe, but maybe more outdated and time specific. However, and I think part of it is because it is urban fantasy and it's very much leaning urban and modern. It's doing so in a way that doesn't feel modern at a specific point in time. It's very modern, like just modern in general. So let's talk about what's even happening here. We have a couple types of creatures, if you will, in this world. You've got your angels, your archangels, which are technically over your angels, but then you've got vampires, which are underneath your angels in the hierarchy system, and then you've got vampire hunters, and then you've got regular old humans. So within our vampire hunter tier, if you will, there are 5. There are 2 types. You can either be born as a hunter or you can make it a career choice. Our girly pop Elena, our main character, she is definitely a born. She has some super secret skills. It opens with our main character Elena talking about basically how she needs a raise for her day job, being a vampire kidnapper basically, because they are just being a handful right now. They're just putting her through it today. I just can't believe. There are lots of fun little side trails that are just like funny and like fun and not trying to make itself be too serious. Like this is definitely a paranormal, they're angels, they're vampires, but like none of it's too serious yet. Anyways, I'm 75 pages in and I'm definitely learning more still. There's definitely a lot of things specific to the magic system and the powers of all of our creatures here that have yet to be revealed. However, we're getting some fun information. As someone who is a self-professed Crescent City stan, I probably will be until the day I die, you can definitely tell how this book inspired it. We've got a Council of the Archangels, which is definitely a theme in Crescent City. It's technically the Cadre of 10? The Cadre of 10? Is that what it's called? The Cadre of 10. We have kind of the Cadre of 10 that are over different portions of the world. The big bad, very handsome, handsome Raphael is in charge of North America, and our girly Papalina is very well renowned for being a very skilled vampire hunter, which in this world is not necessarily killing them, it's basically just kidnapping them, because the vampires, when they are turned into a vampire, the angels are the ones who makes those decisions, and in repayment the vampires are forced to serve basically 100 years of slavery to angels. So anytime that any of those vampires get an idea that they're just going to renege on their contract, they send in a member of the guild. Elena just so happens to be supposedly the best one, because, you know, why wouldn't she be? But come to find out, Raphael has a job for her, and it's a very dangerous job. And not only does she not really want to do this job, she's gonna get paid a crap ton to do it, but at the same time, if she doesn't do it, she's basically threatened with not only her life but the life of her friend. I think I'm interrupting something. Saying no to this job offer isn't really an option, but at least she gets compensated very well, so that's great and all. However, she is technically working for the beautiful, ever so powerful Raphael, who, my friends, he has some powers that we don't necessarily know the full story of. I'm thinking, however, what we do know is that he basically has mind control and really wants Elena to like him, we'll say. But Elena's very feisty. And regardless of the fact that she knows that Raphael would be able to snap her in half in a moment's notice, she's not going to let her inability to actually fight, hurt, stop Raphael in any capacity to stop her from fighting back. So while he may have all of the power, she is not going down with the fight, and it's just fun. Like, she's just feisty and just very fierce, we'll say. This book is just shy of 300 pages, and I don't feel like it's a fast burn necessarily. It definitely, things are starting to happen, and it is steamy. I'm having a great time with it. It's very just like fun, not too serious, and nothing here is super complex or really hard to wrap your brain around. It's all very simple, cut and dry. It's kind of made to be read in one sitting pretty quick, like so. If you're looking for something pretty quick to read without it being a novella, might I recommend this? I mean, I'm only 75 pages in, so like, who knows? It could just take a turn for the worst and I may end up hating it. However, I'm having a really good time with it right now. I read Feather by Olivia Wildenstein a couple months ago, and while I thought that the book itself, like the plot, the characters were not my favorite, I'm obsessed with the angels. I love a good paranormal setting. And we have it here. So if you're somebody who's interested in that, might I recommend this book? But like, if you're not, this isn't going to be fun for you. But if it is for you, so far we're right there. Anyways, I am going to go read the 75 pages that I need to read to stay on track with our buddy read. And I will check in when I finish this. And I'm sensing that that will be very soon, because I'm really tempted to just go sit down tonight and finish the whole rest of this book, because I'm having that good of a time. Anyways, TTYL. had the most absolute girl rot days to end all girl rot days. I feel like I needed it so bad. I just had a very, very busy work week, and I just needed some time to just sit down and just like do nothing but mentally stare at a wall and read, you know? Like, obviously I'm not staring at a wall, but like it kind of does the same service for me. Regardless, I had the best day. The best day meaning that I finished Angel's Blood, but also completely started and finished Dark Fever. Let's talk about it. So yesterday I had about 100 pages until the end. So I did finish that yesterday, and this book is just a fun time. This book is very romance forward. This book is just the definition of brain candy, and honestly, it was the absolute best book to be reading this week. It's not complex necessarily. It follows a lot of the same trappings as you would kind of expect it to, up until a certain point, we'll say. And I just feel like it was a very fun, entertaining, not necessarily brain focused time. And sometimes that is literally everything you need. So I think I'm gonna end up giving this a 4-star. Technically I would give it closer to a 4.5, I'm thinking, but I really enjoyed it. And if you're having one of those weeks where it's just a struggle bus kind of week, might I recommend something like this? It's super fast paced, super fun. It's not necessarily complex where you really have to pay attention to, but it is just brain candy in a book. So I did read and finish this yesterday, and then we have some other things to talk about. I did start and finish Dark Fever. This book was something that I was very much so not expecting. I had read the back of the book a while ago, but then I just didn't really research anything else into it, and I would definitely recommend that. I do just also want to quickly note that this book is definite true urban fantasy. You're dropped in the middle of Manhattan. I don't feel like this book was particular to the time frame that it was written in at all. Like, if this were to be republished with a new cover, like another book we'll talk about here in a little bit, you wouldn't have been able to tell that this book was written in 2009. It feels 2009 in the sense that, like, it's a paranormal fantasy. The overall plot and specific things that are mentioned doesn't necessarily feel tied to 2009, whereas this book, there were quite a few references that definitely dated this one. I didn't really care. I feel like backing these two books up together was very interesting because they are very different and they cover very different sections of fantasy. Angel's Blood was about angels. This book is about fae, and this world is just very interesting. This book overall is definitely an introduction to the world. It's very fantasy forward. There's formation of a romance in this book, but ultimately it's not a thing, which I actually really enjoyed. Yet again, Angel's Blood, there are definite questions that still need to be answered, and there's definitely plot points that have opened up into, you could tell that this could be, I mean, because it is a 6-book series. How many books are in the Guild Hunter series?
15.
So in the front of the book, it's printed to have 6 books, but I wonder if all of these anthologies are technically counted in that 15, whatever blessed Google just said. Anyways, this book definitely leaves you with a lot of questions, and it leaves you with some very interesting plot lines moving forward. But at the same time, I feel like the main important plot points are resolved enough for me. However, this book was just a big fat building point, and I feel like it was very much so an introduction to the world. You get to learn a lot of things about the world. Our main character is learning things about herself that she didn't previously know, and it's very much so creating all of these ideas. At the end, you get some fun things, but ultimately you need more information, and I think that I liked the structure of that in this book a whole ton. But let's get into what this book is even about. So this book kicks off with Mac, our girly pop, who's very much so a girly. She's blonde, she's young, she's fit, she's tan. Mac's talking all about how she's tanning at the pool in her little bikini, and her matching manicure and pedicure are just really set off the tones of the bikini. Like, she's very much so set up to be very vapid, which at the very first go I really did not like it. In the beginning, I was like, I would recommend skipping the first half, at least of the first chapter. However, I think a lot of those things are kind of set up to drive a good chunk of character growth, which I do appreciate. I feel like we could have done that a little bit of a different way. I rewatched Legally Blonde a couple days ago, and I feel like there are definite similarities. If you think of like the girly girl who loves being a girly girl, but at the same time knows that she has depth and doesn't want to be just assumed that she's this pretty frilly little thing, that definitely is very much so the theme in this book. So we're introduced to Michaela, Mac for short, which is so funny because Mac is a very interesting name for the pretty blonde with very long hair and always likes to wear pink and always likes to detail her outfits and how fabulous she is and always likes to talk about her OPI manicure. It's quite good. She likes to detail her outfits in fair-ish detail through the entire book. So if you're somebody who is either my age or a little bit older who has seen those outfits and can just like visualize everything, it's kind of nostalgic in a sense. Our girly pop Mac, her finding out the news that her sister has been very brutally murdered while she was studying abroad in Dublin. The police have basically closed the case. They haven't found anything, and so Mac has decided to quit her bartending job, drop out of the school that she's been attending for a couple of credit hours here and there just to like get mom and dad off her back, and she's going to go to Dublin to try to figure out what the heck happened to her sister. I didn't really feel very emotionally connected to her in the sense of the death of the sister, but I feel like I definitely grew to appreciate that plot line. There's a lot of tones of grief in this book, but I don't necessarily feel like it was so overdone to where if you took that out, you couldn't have the same story. But anyways, girly pop goes to Dublin, figures out not everything is how it seems. She figures out she's what's called a she-seer. And I will say about this book too, there are a lot of very Irish and very Gaelic, I forget which one is which, terminology in this book that is sounded out for us. Thank you. So I feel like my pronunciation of things is not the worst, but definitely not correct either. So she figures out that she is a she-seer, which means that she can see the fae and see past their glamour. And these are not the cutesy hot men fae that are so very lovingly popularized. These are the big, scary, terrifying, soul-sucking kind. And because of that, this book felt very dark and not necessarily occult-like, but kind of less fruity, flowery angel boy than Angel Blood was. You have your two types of fae. You got your Seelie and your Unseelie. In this world, we're seeing mostly the Unseelie so far. I'm curious to see where that plot line develops. This book was very, not scary, but there was a lot of tension with the plot, and I wouldn't call this a thriller by literally any means. However, there were definitely times when my heart was like a little racy. So I definitely feel like the book itself was fast-paced, but also I was really interested in where the plot was going. The thing with the fae in this book is that there are all kinds, so you're introduced to a lot of different creatures. You're not expected to necessarily remember the kinds of creatures. You're just aware that there are a lot of things that go bump in the night, and girly pop is at risk. I so desperately want to read the rest of this series, and I think partially it's because we are left with a lot less resolution in this book than I would have anticipated. This is more fantasy based and more introducing you to the world and to this plot line that is interesting. I wouldn't necessarily call this urban fantasy because it is in Dublin. It's definitely in a city, but it's not in an urban city. It's more like modern fantasy, if that makes sense. I mean, it's technically urban in that big category, but it doesn't feel, we're not shooting guns everywhere. We're not talking about our cell phones all the time. Mac was very invested in her iPod and was always talking about how much she liked music and how much she liked talking about how much she liked music. Certain elements that way definitely dated this book. However, like I said, I didn't really mind. It was still fun. I'm very curious to where the romance in this book where it goes, because you got hardly any of it, and then you got a little right last minute. So if you're wanting to read this book for a super fun romance, not in this one, maybe in this future series, however, that doesn't develop just quite yet. The fantasy elements were really cool in this book, and I want to read more of it. So we have read some really good books this week so far, meaning I happen to have also started a third book yesterday. It was a busy day. It was Girl Roddy's Days of all days, and it was glorious. So I started Burn For Me by Alona Andrews. I had full intention to just read a chapter or two and then get up and like go do something with my life. I did not. I proceeded to lay in bed and read an absolute crap ton of this book. I wanted to save this book until the very end because it is available on Kindle Unlimited. I wanted to just have this in the background ready to go if I needed the option. I made it 50%. So I finished one book, I read a whole book, and then I read half of another book. Keep in mind, these books are very short, which has kind of been so nice because I feel like I've been reading a lot of chunkier books lately, and I just needed not only some momentum, but just something that was genuinely fast-paced. So this book, I was speed reading through this. I'm at 50% and it tells me that I have 2.5 hours left in the book. So this book is very, very quick. However, this book is literally so fun. Just to kind of recap real quick, Angel's Blood is your paranormal fantasy angel fix, right? Darkfever is your paranormal, seelie, unseelie, dark fae fix. This book is your superhero fix. I knew literally nothing about this book. I did not read the back of this book. In between like 200 and 300 years ago, I don't remember the exact time frame, there was a serum that was crafted, invented. People took it, got magical powers. They realized that that was in fact bad, so they took away the serum. However, as people procreate, powers keep going, and so you follow this world in which there is an emphasis on family power, but ultimately who is the most magical. Everyone has different powers. There are certain categories of powers. It's kind of like a genetic lottery, which who gets what kind of thing. Can you tell that I really like this book? I've been very surprised with how this one is going so far. I read When Gracie Met the Grump a couple months ago, and that was just like a silly superhero fun world. It's kind of giving the same thing that this book is. It's interesting too because in a couple of Mariana Zapata's other books, there is a fun grandparent character, which is the same kind of thing with Chestnut Springs, Harvey, We Love You. Anyways, you do have a grandma in this book that is just unhinged, and it's fantastic. I'm reading the description of all the people and I'm blushing. I'm so ready to read the rest of this book. So in this particular novel, you have the Baylor family. The Baylor family has a private investigation company. Nevada is kind of the leader of the family at this point. Her mom was involved in a war accident, so she's not a licensed investigator anymore. However, Nevada is, so she kind of takes up the mantle of the family along with her younger siblings. They all kind of sit on the backside and do a bunch of research. If you have read Veronica Mars, this book is very much so giving Veronica Mars, but like superhero version. Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is, because all the younger siblings in the family are allowed to help with like researching and things, but they're not allowed to actually go out and do anything because, you know, they're under 18. The chapter headers in the physical book are stunning. What? Okay, so without getting into too many of the details, she is more or less forced into hunting down a very big bad, and she does not necessarily have the power to do it on her own, so she's kind of forced into partnering with another big bad. Both of the big bads happen to be very nice to look at, and tension unfolds. I was not expecting the direction. I really like the characters that are in this particular book. Not only do you have a female main character that has a family that is very close to her, but also just hilarious. There's so many funny moments in this book that you're just like giggling along, having a great time. I was kind of concerned at first that our love interest was going to be a big bad who is like actively evil. However, it's not that case. Nevada's power is to be able to tell if people are telling the truth or not, which is very, very helpful, but it's not necessarily a combat power, right? So she's very much so out of her league, especially when you consider the fact that she's trying to safely capture a very dangerous fire dude. So if this sounds unhinged, it is definitely unhinged. It is just like the kind of wacky, it's like if you've read Renegades by Marissa Meyer, this is just like the adult version. I liked this series a whole ton. I still need to read Supernova, but it's definitely just like a fun superheroes are flying around the city doing their thing kind of thing. Might I recommend this series? I'm just saying. I don't necessarily feel like this is stuck in any time frame, especially because this is kind of, it's not really post-apocalyptic, but it's definitely, she retells some of the histories that are from our world and kind of makes it her own in this world. So it's definitely our world, but at the same time, there's a lot of differences. It definitely feels like a different mirrored version of our world that just happens to have magical superpowers. It's just so fun. You do follow basically a lot of family dynasties because the super serum, whatever, that initially gave everybody their powers, they figured out that it was kind of dangerous. Like, some people that took the serum ended up with powers, which is great, and then some people didn't have good effects. the side effects were not kind to them. So they banished the serum situation. And so now all of the family is basically passed down genetically. So you get a lot of these familial bloodlines and all of this accumulated power. So the whole dynasty element to this book is very prevalent, and it's just interesting. I'm having a really great time. Let me just say, our love interest in this book, I am so giddy. Our big bad love interest is definitely big and definitely bad. And he's definitely big in his badness. And I feel like she doesn't want to trust him because he's done some really terrible things, but you're kind of figuring out that he's not necessarily all that it's cracked up to be, but also because she is able to tell the truth, she can kind of wade through that scenario a little bit better. And also, who doesn't love following a private investigator? So it's juicy. Anyways, I'm having a really good time. I'm curious what the publication schedule for the rest of these books is, because I know that this fairly recently was re-released. Yeah. Okay, so it was just a republish. It used to be under Avon, but they are republishing it, which, like, good for them, because if it had been the old cover, I probably never would have picked this book up. I mean, I would have picked it up for this video just because Chandler said it, but like, if I hadn't been specifically doing this video and if I was just doing like normal regular reading, I never would have picked this up. However, this I would have picked up. Publishers doing re-releases is always a little funky dory, but I will say that all 3 books of Nevada's story, which is obviously who I'm interested in right now, they're all currently available on Kindle Unlimited. Book 2 will be re-released in paperback on June 18th, and then book 3 will be re-released August 13th. So they are getting physical editions out pretty quickly, which I will give them massive credit to. I'm having a really great time with this series, and I'm very glad it's all on KU, because I feel like I just want to speed read through all of it because it's just so fun. Anyways, I will check back in with you when I have finished this book, TTYL. Banter is bantering. Why is this so funny? Emotions that I'm currently encountering are so up and down. I'm experiencing whiplash in the best of ways. It's like one moment I'll just be giggling along and just having the best time, and the next minute I'm like, oh, there, oh, like cute banter, and the next moment we're talking about how we just killed somebody and how we're emotionally dealing with that and how our family's at risk, and it's great. If you would have told me to expect anything that happened in that book, I would not have accepted it whatsoever. I feel like the plot itself was fairly straightforward, but the character development, I was so sucked in. And I'm locked and loaded, friends. I have to read the rest of the series. What in yeah, whenever you talk about tension and angst, this one, Your Honor, I fear. I am obsessed. What? This is getting an easy 5-star for me, which makes it the 3rd 5-star of the year, and I am just I'm flabbergasted, truly. I was kind of not confused, but curious as to where this was all going at the end of the day, and then we got the epilogue, and yeah, oh my gosh, that just happened. I feel like all the superpowers and like superhero elements of this book was very interesting. But here's the thing, the banter was bantering. If you're a fan of Mariana Zapata and like that style of banter where it doesn't take anything too serious, but then at the same time it's just very clever, this one. The romance in this book was a lot more slow burn than I anticipated it being, but the amount of angst and tension and just like goodness that was in this book, yeah, the flabber has been guested. I need to like sum up my thoughts about this week, and I don't even know where to even begin because I just feel like That's how I feel like. Give me 2 seconds to report back. I had the absolute best time reading these books this week. This week we read everything from an angel romance to a fae. I was gonna say dark romance, but it's not a dark romance, it's just a darker fae romance and a superhero romance. I would say out of the 3 of these, this one's definitely my favorite. However, I can't complain about a single thing that happened this week, and I am so here for it. So here for it. Ironically enough, all of these books were urban fantasy technically. It's interesting to see publishing trends across time, 2006, 2009, and 2014. During those time frames, urban fantasy was a lot more commonly published than it is now. I always feel like I am looking for more urban fantasy, and I feel like I want more to be actively published. However, there is some good out there. And these series are already completed, so I can dive in and read them whenever the heck I want to, and I find that a really fantastic quality. I asked myself the question at the beginning of this week, was it a good idea to go back and read older books? I was kind of concerned how this week was gonna go, truthfully. I was concerned if any pieces of these were gonna either come off as cringe, as super dated, as things that we maybe wouldn't publish anymore, plot points and themes that just like would not fly anymore. And I was concerned that would be the case with these. However, no, there is a certain judging a book by its cover element to happen here, because if I were to just look at this book, I wouldn't have ever really thought to pick it up, but I'm so glad that I did. With the exception of certain pieces in this book, I feel like all of these could be rebranded, given a new cover. These covers are so pretty cool. If they took away Homegirl, published this in a non-mass market size these days, I feel like we would be looking back a lot more often. As is the case with this book, they newly redid the cover, and a lot more people are going to be a lot more willing to pick these up. And I have a feeling that this is going to be more popular as people start to find out about it. I personally completely missed the release of this series, and the only reason I found it was because I was specifically looking for it thanks to Chandler. However, I'm so glad. Currently thinking about what I'm doing for the rest of the day, and I am actively having to hold myself back from reading book 2. Do I really need to prevent myself from reading it? Do I actually have any responsibilities today? I don't think I do. I might actually just start this today. We'll see. Anyways, I'm absolutely obsessed with all of these books, and I want to continue reading all of these series. I'm really happy with the order that I read everything in this week, because I feel like this just really kick-started a great time. This is definitely for my romance forward friends. It's not necessarily a super fast burn, but like kind of is, and it was just a fun brain candy time. Darkfever is going to be for my friends who want more of a fantasy driven story where the world is definitely building and you're getting to see behind the curtain a little bit, and you're learning that there is a lot more to learn, but you're having the greatest time learning it, and you want more and you need more. That's this. And then Burn for me is gonna be for my friends who just like want a fun me. There were so many times when I was laughing out loud during this book. Story that also has the most tensiony and angsty romance that's ever existed. Maybe not the most, but like really high up there. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, don't forget to like this video and subscribe, especially to see my thoughts on these series moving forward. I'm so excited. And leave a comment down below. Leave a wing, because I feel like we had a lot of flying happening this week and I have 0 complaints whatsoever. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day or night wherever you are, and I will catch you in the next one.